It is 6 o'clock, so I will call the July 28th, 2022 meeting of the Bastrop Planning and Zoning Commission to order. You might see a new face on the dais. We've asked Greg Moss to come in. Gary. I always want to call you Greg. Gary. Call you to dinner. Okay. He's here to help fill out our
so in our ordinance we have that any of the zoning board of adjustment members can act as an alternate for P&Z. So to ensure we had quorum tonight, we called up Gary to serve as an alternate on P&Z.
And he stepped up, and we appreciate it. Second on the agenda is a citizen comment. Or do we have anyone who is signed to speak on any item not on the agenda?
Not at this time.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 3. This is something new that we haven't seen before. This is our consent agenda. So Jennifer is going to explain to everybody here and watching why we're doing this and the benefits.
Sure. So for the Planning and Zoning Commission, you actually have approval authority over plats. So you're the ones, it stops with you, buck stops with you on approval. So since plats are a ministerial process, none of these are asking for a variance from the code. They can be acted on a consent agenda, all in one action. So Debbie will read the items, and then if anyone has a particular issue with one of them and wants to hear about them, you can pull it down to the regular agenda and we can talk about it, and then take action on it individually, or you can vote for all of them at the same time. And it'll just kind of, if no one has any questions, it speeds up the meeting so we can get to the items that are going to take a little longer.
And the plats have come after there's been review and actions and the like, so it's the last.
Yeah, so all of these plats have been reviewed and are administratively complete and meet all of our code requirements.
So if you've been to a council meeting, you know that the council does have a consent agenda, and with the same option for any council member to pull anything down that they want to hear. So with no further delay, I'll go ahead and read the consent agenda. Item 3A, consider action to approve meeting minutes from June 30, 2022 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Item 3B, consider action to approve Pecan Park commercial amended preliminary plat being 55.355 acres out of the Nancy Blakey Survey Abstract Number 98, located south of West State Highway 71 and west of Sterling Drive, within the city limits of Bastrop, Texas, as shown in Exhibit A. Item 3C, consider action to approve the Colony Mud 1D, Section 4, preliminary plat, being 25.647 acres out of the Jose Manuel Bang Survey, Abstract Number 5, located north of Sam Houston Drive and East Republic Drive, within the extraterritorial jurisdiction of Bastrop, Texas, as shown in Exhibit A. Item 3D, consider action to approve the Bastrop Grove Section 4, Phase 2 final plat, being 37.781 acres out of the Nancy Blakey Survey, Abstract Number 98, located south of Agnes Street and east of State Highway 304, within the city limits of Bastrop, Texas, as shown in Exhibit A. Item 3E, consider action to approve the Colony Mud 1B, Section 7, final plat, being 12 acres out of the Jose Manuel Bang Survey, Number 5, located south of Sam Houston Drive, within the extraterritorial jurisdiction of Bastrop, Texas, as shown in Exhibit A. Do any of the commission members have any questions? I want to pull this down from the consent agenda and vote on it separately. If none, I'll consider a motion.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion to approve with a second. Call the roll.
Carrie Kaler.
Aye.
Judah Ross.
Aye.
Debbie Moore.
Yes.
Cynthia Meyer.
Yes.
Greg Sherry.
Yes.
Gary Moss.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously. Item 4A, items for individual consideration. Item 4A, consider and to appoint a Planning and Zoning Commission member as its representative on the Historic Landmark Commission. I think we should put this aside for right now. I just realized we didn't call the roll to begin with, but we do have a quorum. And since we do have some members that are absent, one of our new members had told us from the beginning she had a previous commitment and wouldn't be here. So if there's no objection, I'd like to put this off until next month. We hopefully have a full board. Okay, thank you very much. Item 4B, hold public hearing and consider action on a zoning concept scheme rezoning 42.697 acres out of the Nancy Blakey Survey Abstract 98, located at 151 FM 20, from P2 Rural to P1 Nature, P4 Mix, P5 Core, and PCS Civic Space, as shown in Exhibit A, within the city limits of Bastrop, Texas, and forward to the August 23, 2022 City Council meeting. Ms. Bills.
Good evening. So this is a rezoning for the parcel of land you see on the screen here. It is access to FM 20, and it actually has about a 20-foot-ish access that actually touches State Highway 71 as well. So this tract is a little over 42 acres. It was annexed back in 2011. Without any of our annexations, the default zoning at the time was ag open space, which with our new code defaulted to P2 rural. So that's the zoning that's been in place since 2011. There were, and I think still are, a few manufactured homes that were on the property that prior to annexation, and that use was allowed to continue up until they wanted to change the use, add more, start doing something different, and then that triggers rezoning and coming into compliance with the code. So the applicant is requesting a mix of place types. P1 Nature is we have a little bit zoned in the city right now. It's mostly the river. Those are areas that are going to be left undeveloped and usually have some kind of natural feature in them. In this case, there's some waterways, drainage in that area. P4 Mix, which is our mixed single-family and commercial zoning district. You can do any building type from single-family up to a house form commercial building. And then P5 Core, which allows a mix of some multifamily and commercial buildings as well. And then PCS Civic Space, which those is the appropriate zoning district for parks, community amenities, those kind of things. The future land use plan for this area is called out to be primarily single-family attached, and multifamily. It is what in our future land use plan designated as transitional residential. So it's meant to be an area that buffers between, you can see the red, which is the commercial future land use, and the neighborhood residential green. So you go from more intense to less intense as you get further away from the Highway 71 corridor. So the existing zoning, as I stated, is P2 rural. You can see, so the property directly to the north is in the ETJ. It's not in the city limits. That's the RV park, for those that are familiar with town. On the south and the east sides, that area is in what's an annexation development agreement. So similarly, in 2011, this area was tax exempt to agricultural use. So we offered them a development agreement that can remain outside the city limits until which time they start development. So that's what that property is. So it will eventually be in the city limits. Similar across the street, and then this tract was also annexed in 2011. So around it, there's a little bit of, in this weirdness, was TxDOT right-of-way that TxDOT then sold to the adjoining property owner. So it's zoned, but it's actually part of this tract. So that happened post-2011. So what they are requesting, you can see they've got a mix of zoning districts, which is what our pedestrian shed analysis and what the code requires is to look at that mix that creates that complete neighborhood. So up at the front along Highway 20, they're showing P5, which would allow them to do mixed use commercial and residential in that area. They're showing civic space up front as a detention pond because the drainage kind of drains to both sides of this property. And then they didn't quite match our color scheme, but the middle purple is P4 mix. So that allows single family, it allows townhomes, it allows apartments. So it allows a mix of different residential building types. And then they show a couple more civic space areas, and then P1 natural, which will be a park, and that's where their drainage currently flows. So if you saw on the aerial map, you can see ponds that are already in that area. So they submitted a zoning concept scheme that shows the conceptual layout. There's obviously tweaks that'll be made as we go along during the process. This is the first stage to get the zoning in place. The next stage then would actually do the subdivision process, where we'll look at actually where the streets are really going to line up, where the blocks are going to be. But you can see in their zoning concept scheme, they've got our grid requirements with the master transportation plan required a road on the south boundary, a road on the north boundary, 2 roads through the middle, and then they have a main road that'll come in off of 20 through the middle. And then we're looking at how we can use this as, because that is a requirement to be a road, but they only have 20 feet of it, so that'll be one that will phase in over time, and it may just be an emergency access until the adjacent property owner develops. So internally to the 720 grid, you'll see they have a mix of alleys and pedestrian walkways that the houses would front on. So this meets the intent of the code, providing a walkable, gridded network of streets and alleys to keep the traffic off the main roads. They provided some conceptual building renderings of some ideas of the products that they intend to develop in the project. So you can see they're all, being an alley-loaded product, all the garages will be behind the main structures, and a lot of these will actually face onto green spaces. So for a policy explanation, the 3 intents of the B3 code, fiscal sustainability, one of our goals is trying to create those complete neighborhoods. So they're providing a mix of zoning districts that's in compliance with the code. That'll provide those natural areas, park space, single family, multifamily, and commercial, all within walkable distance of each other. It's perpetuation of authentic Bastrop. They're perpetuating the traditional neighborhood development pattern with the gridded streets and alleys. And then for geographically sensitive developments, actually I meant to delete that out. The first, they're not actually in the floodplain, but they do have some natural drainage ways on the property that that they have to be sensitive to. They're on the east side of the property. And the P4 mix allows for that greater density of development types on the rest of the property to leave that area undisturbed. For public comment, we sent 6 property owner notifications to the area 200 foot around. As you saw, there were several large tracts, so it was just 6 property owners, and we received no responses on this case. So the next steps for this is to take it to the City Council on August 23rd for first reading and September 14th for second reading. And the goal is to get the base zoning districts approved in that mix, and then they'll come through the process. And if during the process there's any other warrants or anything that are needed, any deviations from the code, we'll address them as we go through and as those are identified. But as of now, they meet the intent of the code with their zoning concept scheme.
So the applicant, are they asking for any warrant this time?
They've asked for 3 warrants that we're working through administratively, and we are working through. They're reasonable, and so we think we can work those out at the administrative level and not have to bring them to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions?
On the main entrance will be off 20 then, even with that
Yes.
little road?
And I
going to
will say
71?
that's where some of the tweaking may come in, is FM20 is a TxDOT controlled road. So TxDOT will have a lot of the ultimate say in where these connections are. So for now, the main connections would be one to the south and one in the middle. Right now, if you're familiar with the RV park to the north, they actually have a driveway right up there. They're showing a future right-of-way that would be eventually able to connect into that when that redevelops or they change their development. So this is where we get into that we call incremental development, that they're actually only going to build half the road, but they're going to build it in such a way that when the adjacent property owner builds, it's able to become a full road section. So.
Do they plan to develop all the property? Are they going to do that in phases?
Yes. No, they plan to, my understanding is the whole property. And they have a presentation they'll give here in a second so they can give you more detail on their business model.
Gotcha. Okay. If there are no more questions, I'll open the public hearing.
Well, do you want to hear from the applicant first? Or?
We can do that if they would like to speak to us.
There you
I'm sorry?
go.
Until next month, why can't I be on?
Right.
Well, please identify yourself.
Okay.
You
Name is
have
Adam, I'm sorry?
Since you're the applicant, you will have more than the normal 3 minutes.
Thank you.
But if you don't need it, you don't have to.
My name is Adam Green. I'm the Senior Vice President of Bridge Tower Homes. We're based in Dallas, and this is our project. And what I thought I would do is, you've heard the technical side of it. So who is Bridge Tower, and what do they want? What are they doing here in Bastrop? So I thought I would just take you through some of what we do and how we do it, and then of course I'll answer any questions that you have. So the company was formed in 2013. We build single-family homes all over the state. We're here. We're in Round Rock, we're in Kyle, we're in Temple, and we're also over in Houston, and then some places outside the state as well, Nashville and up in North Carolina. Our typical home and the way that we build our communities sort of works like this. Our financial partner is a healthcare partner. So they're very much about health and wellness and getting out of the house, things like that. It's not about, there's the gym, go work out. It's about, let's design the community so that people can come out of their front door here and there, and they can see each other. They may not do that, but we want to give them the opportunity to do that. The other thing that we do, which speaks to, I'm just jumping ahead here a little bit, which speaks to the community, is we program our communities. In other words, you probably caught on the site layout that we will build an amenity center. Absolutely. We will build some tot parks, we'll build trails or walking trails throughout, and again, that's in the plan, and that will remain as part of, once we finish up the tweaking, it will remain in there. But it's more than that. It's having movie nights, for example, at our facility. The amenity center that we have is not just a swimming pool. There's yoga, there's tot games, there's all kinds of different things that we do. We do Halloween, we do snow cones, and so forth. And the whole idea there is just to foster this sense of neighborhood and wanting to get people out of the house. So that's from whence we come and how we view these things when we build them. Movie night and so forth. Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Do it? Say again? Okay. Give it to me. Got it. Got it. I was noticing down here in this square, it says 0.73 acres.
Mm-hmm.
What's that going to be? Do you know? A little spot there? And the reason I'm asking is that you're talking about recreation things and stuff like that.
Let's find out what it is.
One thing about Bastrop County that's kind of interesting is that looking at the national average and also the Texas average about the availability for recreation is very low in Bastrop. It's 40% compared to 80% and the rest of Texas and the rest of the United States.
And while we're going to answer your question, I want to just dovetail on that and say to you, yes, there was some wetland area in the back that we didn't want to, and in fact, in certain cases, couldn't build it. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. So the green area in the back, it is to your point. It's not a swamp.
Yep.
Kids can go down there and play there. They can throw a football there. Yeah, if it rains really, really bad, it's going to get wet. But short of going to continue to maintain it, and we left it that way. And admittedly, I'll be honest, we did that because we didn't want to get in with the Army Corps and all the people that get involved with that. It was just easier to turn it into a park and then push everything forward. Can we answer his question, Bernie?
Yeah, the .73,
Mm-hmm.
I think you're talking about this area right
I
here.
am.
And
There's a
that's,
specific reason I'm asking the question. I'll tell you in a
okay,
second. All right.
okay. Well, in the thought,
Well, what is it?
the thought on that area, that's an open space.
Okay.
And
So it's a play space.
it's a play space. The idea might be that that's where the movies, the outdoor movies,
Okay.
are done and so
Correct.
forth. The other location over here is very similar. We've identified a dog park in there. You know, you wouldn't want to have necessarily the movie space there and have a little bit of a conflict. So that's kind of what's thought of there. It's not identified as a civic space
Okay.
on the zoning. That has to do a little bit with how the ratios work under the code, but it's still open space.
Right.
So, and it may be a difference between whether it's open to the general public or whether it's a use to the community specifically.
Yep.
Does that answer your question?
Well, yeah, but you don't have any plans for it right now. So,
Well,
but put a bug in.
Except we're not planning on building on it.
I understand. Could I give you a suggestion?
Absolutely.
Pickleball. You know anything about pickleball?
Yes.
Surprise, surprise.
Shock and shock. Pickleball is the fastest growing sport in the United States.
It's ridiculous.
It's
but it
ridiculous. It really is. And I'm just giving you an example. You know, we have a pickleball association here, and we've gone from 1st of March, 25 people to 175 people in this association.
My God,
That's
incredible.
It is. And that area right there for pickleball courts and people that are moving into the colony, you know, the new colony out there on 969 and things
Correct.
like that, one of their considerations was pickleball courts.
We'll get into it.
Take a look at it.
We will get into it, absolutely. So in general, I didn't want to go on and on and on with it, but that's who we are. I think it's important that while we are in other towns, we are in the vicinity. It's also very important to us that you know that our company is what we call completely vertical. We buy the land. We have our own people oversee the development of the land. They're our employees. I mean, we hire site contractors and so forth. When we go to build the homes, we have our own builders that are our employees, and then they will hire subs and so forth. And then later on, we manage. We don't farm out to anything. We want to take care of it. And the other thing I think that will become important, I know that we'll have to go over it with the city, who I want to talk about in a minute real quick, but the materials that we put on the houses, you know, they're not going, certainly no vinyl or anything, but it's not going to be 4 sides of hardy plank, right? Cement board. So those are the kind of things that we get into because we're in this for the long term, and that's why we do it that way. And regardless of what your vote is, I wanted to just tell you that the city and the folks in planning, it's really quite amazing because they have it together. They really do. The way that they run it like a business. They treat it like a business, but not in a caustic way. But I've come from cities that are bigger than this and smaller than this, and it's like you want to just pull what hair I have left out. That is not the case here. Now, while we may want to, talk through a road or whatever, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about accessibility, returning telephone calls, returning emails, all of it. And these guys have it aces down. And I just wanted you to know that. You guys are the planning commission. These are the planners that put this stuff together for you. So that's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Thank you for those comments. They
Thank
get beat up a lot, I know.
They
And
do.
appreciate your kind remarks.
Okay.
Does anyone have any questions?
I don't really have a question. I just would like to commend you because I've been in the health industry most of my life, and that's my business. And coming from that perspective and being so concerned about that and building community is very, very refreshing to hear.
Thank you.
Appreciate that, thank you. Anybody else have any questions? If not, now I will open the public hearing. Has anyone signed up to speak, either for or against?
Not at this time.
No one signed up to speak, so I will close the public hearing. And I will at this time consider a motion to approve or disapprove the zoning.
I make a motion to approve the zoning concept scheme presented.
This motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Would you call the roll, please?
Cynthia Meyer,
Yes.
Carrie Kaler,
Yes.
Debbie Moore,
Yes.
Greg Sherry,
Yes.
Judah Ross,
Yes.
Gary Moss.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. So move on to your next step and let's get it going. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. So this will be, I have to jump down, we're so far down on the agenda, I was saying, where are we? Item 4C, hold public hearing and consider action on a zoning concept scheme, zoning the Lone Star subdivision reserve 75.140 acres located at the northeast corner of State Highway 71 and Farm to Market Road 969 from P2 rural to P4 mix and P5 core, as shown in Exhibit A, within the city limits of Bastrop, Texas, and forward to the August 23rd, 2022 City Council meeting. Ms. Bills.
Yes, so this area is this big red chunk you see here, that it's at the corner of 71 and 99, so you'll know if you continue up north, you'll hit the Colony and the future Val Verde. You've got the mini storage over here currently, and then Burleson Crossing is on the other side. So it's actually bounded by Duff Drive, Blakey Lane, 969, and 71. So this area, the total acreage of the site is a little over 75 acres. What they're rezoning tonight is a little over 52 acres. This area is the front, about 400 feet, was annexed in the 90s, I believe, and then the remainder of it was put into one of those development annexation agreements in 2011. So now they're at the point where they're ready to start developing the property. So now they've requested annexation. So that will line up at City Council with their zoning application. So it's not in the city limits yet for those 52 acres, but it will be, and when it is, it defaults zones as P2. So that's kind of the background. So they're requesting a mix at this time of P4 and P5 zoning on this property, with the ability to then zone to the 10% requirement for the civic space at a later date when they've nailed down their plans a little better of where exactly that's all going to go, because they have, as we'll see here in a second, a lot of different kind of moving parts as they move forward on this. So before final plat, or at the final platting stage, they'll identify those and either dedicate those areas as open space or parkland or rezone them to civic space at that time. So for this area, the future land use plan shows it to be a mix of, the front part is general commercial and the back is that transitional residential, which again, we're on the 71 corridor, so the idea is we get more intense to less intense as you go north. You can see the yellow roads are the master transportation plan roads that go through. So you can see right now the lower third is currently in the city limits, and zone P5, the upper 2/3 is in the ETJ and that annexation agreement. And you can see the proposed zoning map is to the, in this exhibit, that they'll doing P4 along Blakey Lane for multifamily, and then doing P5 for a mix of different uses. So in their zoning concept scheme, they provided several different exhibits that show the intent, their kind of general plan for this area. And so they're showing multifamily along the northern boundary within a main thoroughfare road that'll come kind of through the middle, and then have a mix of retail, shopping, restaurants, office space, hotel. So it'll be a complete shopping and residential area that is in very close proximity to a whole lot of single-family residential with Valverde and the Colony just up the road that'll be able to access this site. So in there, they have a project overview, kind of their, and again, all these plans are subject to change, but all of these are available underneath the zoning districts they're asking for. So you've got your larger shopping, kind of anchor tenants. You've got what they're calling lifestyle, so that's your retail, dining, office, your kind of walkable shops, shopping center. Then you've got your different medical, hotel, retail sites on the other side. And you'll see they already have some existing drainage areas to the east, so they're focusing that'll be drainage and got a civic space, kind of open space. They just haven't exactly figured out the size yet, so that's why they're pushing this civic space requirement until later. They did lay out an exhibit of where they intend to place civic space. So in our code, civic space can be a lot of different things. It's not just a park. It's also kind of gallery walking spaces, pocket parks, corners of the street where have a sitting area, those kind of things.
Pickleball courts? Pickleball courts?
Pickleball courts.
Yeah, okay.
So it's a mix of different things that it's active space where the residents and shoppers can use that area, and it's accessible. So they show kind of that mix, so their intention is to have a main corridor down, a walkable pedestrian corridor down the middle, and then with the multifamily have different amenities, and then of course the drainage area have that also be an amenity with trails. So you'll see how they're meeting. In your packet, they showed several different exhibits showing the 720 grid and the 330 grid and how they intended to meet those with a mix of both public streets and a mix of private but accessible, either pedestrian trails, private drives, and a mix of those things that'll accomplish that grid structure and that, I lost the word I wanted, circulation through the site. So you can see, so while this may look like one big shopping center, they have treated this as a street at the front that then will lead into this area and then come out all the way across. So you still have that block structure in the development, even though it may not be a publicly dedicated street. One of the other things that will affect this site as well is TxDOT is the approval authority, and we've already talked with them, and they have some very specific spacing requirements in this area. So they own the two connections for the streets there are pretty much the maximum that TxDOT will allow. And then they'll have to look at how many connections they'll be able to have to 969. So TxDOT has to approve all of those, and they have specific spacing requirements that don't always meet our exact 330 grid requirements. So for policy explanation, for fiscal sustainability, this is a walkable mixed-use retail shopping and multifamily development. So it's got those mix of uses that create that complete both shopping district and multifamily that'll be in close proximity to either work there, shop there, and then work in town. Perpetuation Authentic Bastrop, they are proposing a traditional neighborhood development style with a grid of public and private and pedestrian walkways through the development. And similarly, this for geographically sensitive, they're using the natural topography of the land to inform where their drainage and attention and utilize that space as an amenity to the site. So it always, in the picture, is kind of like the other one. It looks like it's going to be a big pond. It's not necessarily a big pond, but it's a grassy area that when it rains will be a pond. But the rest of the time will most likely be an area that people can walk and enjoy the nature. And then It'll be their detention, yeah, for the whole site. And it's actually already detention for the storage next door. So this area was actually previously platted. You'll notice this name on it is the Lone Star subdivision, or storage subdivision, and reserve. And reserve means we're going to plat the rest of it later. That's in planning terms. They knew that they wanted to plat the whole area, but they didn't have that area done, so they had to come back in with a replat to figure out the exact layout of the streets and the blocks. And we will have, again, some site constraints on the exact driveway and street locations on 969 and 71 due to TxDOT requirements. And I said FM 304 because I'm in the wrong part of the world. Public comment, we sent out 11 property owners notifications in the 200-foot area. We received 1 response in favor. Next steps on this will be go to the August 23rd City Council meeting for public hearing and first reading, and the September 14th City Council meeting for the second reading. At that point, then the zoning and annexation will be complete, and they can move on to the next step, which will be the subdivision process.
Are they requesting any warrants at this time?
They are not requesting any warrants at this time. They intend to follow the code, and so they actually were very excited about the way we structured our code and the ability to provide kind of this walkable. And if you looked in your packet, they provide several examples of kind of plaza areas that you can have outdoor eating and shopping areas. And so, during the process, there may be warrants they have to request and things we have to look at for very specific items, but we'll address those as we go along. They're not asking for anything at this point.
I have a comment. Well, I guess it's a question. So we do have a proposed commercial developer who's able to build to our code. So it is possible to build to our code without any warrants.
And it may be that it's not 100% able to, but again, we'll figure those out as we go along, which standards need to be tweaked, but we'll be able to do those on a case-by-case basis. So, but the general intent of the code is being met, that
Sure.
we have walkable, we have a gridded network of connected streets and walkways with a mix of different building types that'll informs that will be utilized by the citizens of Bastrop.
Thank you.
And I believe, I wanted to say someone is here. Someone is here if you have any. I think they're from the multifamily portion of it, if you have any questions.
Okay, we may not have any questions, but do you want to address the commission? It's up to you if you want to.
No, thank you very much.
Okay.
With partners who's under contract to even ready to go.
Yeah, they're the multifamily, so they're going to do that. They'll start with the multifamily to the north, because that usually has the longest lead time on construction.
Okay.
So an apartment complex, from the day they start building, it takes about 18 months to build. So
And staff recommendation?
staff recommendation is to approve as submitted and forward to City Council. And so again, this will establish, in this case, so the base zoning districts on how they've laid them out, and then that they're going to meet the grid requirements, and that in this case, they're going to push the civic space, 10% civic space requirement to a later stage once they've identified the exact civic space locations.
Gotcha.
So that's the only deviation that they're asking for, but we feel like it's a reasonable request that they figure that out as they go along.
Greg, you have a question? No. Your light's on. Oh, it's, okay. Does anybody have a question? If not, I will open the public hearing. Do we have anyone signed up to speak?
Not at this time.
We have no one signed up to speak, so we'll close the public hearing. At this time, I will entertain a motion to approve, disapprove, or what you want to do.
I enthusiastically motion to approve item 4D.
Motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second?
Motion and a second. Would you call the roll, please, ma'am?
Carrie Kaler,
Yes.
Cynthia Meyer,
Yes?
Debbie Moore, Greg Sherry,
Yes.
Judah Ross,
Yes.
Gary Moss.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Congratulations. We look forward to working with you. Okay. Item 4D, discussion and possible direction of code requirements for window openings related to internal coverings and signs. And I ask that this be put on the agenda. The I've had an individual talk to me about the percentages of the window that must be available, and it can't have flyers or different things in the windows, and they were asking, what is the difference between having flyers that block out over a certain percentage versus blinds or curtains or whatever? And they were concerned that they didn't understand what the difference would be and why there was a difference. So I asked Jennifer to let us have a discussion about this.
So, short answer is so we have specific requirements in the sign code that address signage, because signage, especially for windows, tends to be a permanent. It's usually a decal or a painting, something that goes on permanent to the window, semi-permanent. But we don't have anything, we're silent to the case of window coverings. The intent is that the windows be left open and not be 100% blocked, but we don't have any code requirements for that that specifically prohibit doing that.
One of the arguments that I remember hearing was that for safety, for police to be able to see into the shops. But I think that it's defeated when you have blinds that cover the whole. They may not be permanent, but you still can't see inside an establishment.
And part of it also is in a downtown district especially, is to create that walkable interest. So if you hit, typically, if a walker walks along and you hit either a blank wall for an entire block, or in this case, a whole bunch of businesses that all have shuttered their windows, they tend to stop walking and turn back and go the other way. Like, they don't go on to the next block. So in a lot of downtowns, it is addressed. We just didn't address it in our code. It's to create that active space. It's the same reason why in some cities, they've actually prohibited on downtown's offices on the first floor, because offices then tend to do that where they block the windows up. They're not an active space. They require offices to be on the second story. Since we're form-based, we don't have that requirement. We have the requirement of how the form has to be. You can use it however you want. But while we say your glazing has to be transparent and clear, it doesn't address coverings inside. I think the intent is to have it open, but we don't specifically speak to that.
So if you glaze and restrict the vision into the building, you can be cited, fined? What happens?
So when I say glazing, it's the windows have to be a transparent glass. So people are putting transparent glass in, but then they're putting up blinds. And typically, I do understand some of downtown gets sun in the afternoon, but the idea is those should be temporarily pulled down during the sun and then pulled back up. But some people leave them down all the time, but we don't have any repercussions in our code for that.
Okay, so if you leave your blind downs all the time, nothing happens?
Nope.
To you? So my concern is that it doesn't seem like we're playing on an even field here.
And the other difference with signs is a blind, maybe it's all one color usually, or one thing. Signs, if you have 50 flyers in the window, that creates a lot of visual clutter, which is still different than a blind. So,
well, visual clutter, but if that's what the business owner wants, I don't see how we can stop them from doing that.
Well, that's what's
that's
what's in the sign code currently.
Yeah,
so
gotcha. I'd like to hear from the commission.
If I may, Deb, this is one of the reasons I've requested for us to revisit the sign ordinance, because there are just some things in there that seem a little overreaching to me and that are prohibitive, like you say, Debbie, for businesses to advertise. And if I'm not mistaken, isn't it only 25% of the window that can have, so if you have a small window and you're only occupying 25%, people can't even really read whatever. So that's my main concern, is just to kind of revisit as a whole the sign ordinance to kind of work some of this out.
And part of we are limited staff right now, and it's revisiting the sign ordinance that we'll have to get some direction from council, and if they want to budget, we don't have anything budgeted for hiring consultants to help with that process, and so that'll be a whole a whole new process that we don't currently have in our work plan, so.
So it could be a while before it's revisited, right?
Until we get staffed up and potentially have funding for a consultant, so.
What are our options if we feel like maybe it's not a level playing field? Could we request that the council revisit and suspend any kind of citation until it's revisited?
They could do that. Council can, they're free to change the code, you know, with public hearings but
Okay.
again, if they're changing the code permanently, then we'll have to rewrite the code and
Right.
I've got.
But in the interim, we could just suspend, we could recommend that they suspend a portion of it?
I would have to check with legal on that,
Okay.
on what that actual process would look like.
Carrie?
I agree with Cynthia. I feel like if you're paying rent and you're paying taxes, what's inside your space should more or less, if it's not a health and safety issue, should be up to the business owner, proprietor. I would support suspending citations until we've had a chance to look that up, if that's what legal thinks is appropriate, actionable avenue for it.
And I will say at this point in time, no one has been cited for a window sign.
Well, that's a good thing.
So people may have said they've been cited for some window signs, they may have been cited for other signs, but not window signs.
But not window signs. Okay. What's the pleasure of the commission? Because no one's been cited, it doesn't mean they won't be, but we at least want the council to know that we believe that it's not a level playing field and we need it. We want it revisited before citations are issued. Is that fair?
I 100% agree with you, Debbie, and also there are just so many sections of the sign code that are not fair. Just take the sidewalk signs. Carrie had mentioned at one time that we need to kind of readdress those, so that's kind of why I put it in a whole, and I 100% support any hold on citations for anything in the side code. No, let me say that, because that would be crazy. There are some things that are very flagrant. However, I do think we need a fair playing field all the way around.
Okay, this might be a first step. So could you advise the council that P&Z encourages them to suspend any citations on the window
Any citations on any sign
On the
code or
s-
just window signs?
on the window signs,
Okay.
on the coverings?
And does that cover, just on cover, the percentage covered?
Yes.
Because we do have other requirements because I noticed it last night when I was driving through, that you're not supposed to have blinking lights in your windows either, and we have a number of those going on right now. Blinking signs,
Although, yeah,
so.
that's from forever. They have had blinking signs there that
Well, I
weren't
know,
supposed
but-
to be there. But we're talking about the percentage coverage
Percentage
right now.
coverage, okay.
And hopefully we can revisit that sign ordinance at the appropriate time when you're staffed up and we can take a look at it with the consultant with recommendations and having a meaningful relook at
Okay,
our
so you're
sign.
going to make a motion of direction or feedback to send to council, or?
Can somebody make a motion for me? Cynthia?
I'd like to make a motion to take to council to consider revisions for under the sign code for the window coverings, and to temporarily suspend any citations that would be given until these issues can be visited in the future.
For window signs.
For percentage of
Yes.
coverage, yes. Is there a second?
A second.
Motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Please let it be shown that it passed unanimously. Thank you, ma'am. We need to bring dinner when we want to go back and revisit all the sign ordinance. Maybe we take it sections at a time.
Yeah.
You know, a little bite at that elephant every once in a while. Thank y'all. Number 5, updates. 5A, update on recent city council actions regarding planning department items.
Yes, so the two items I think that have gone since the last council, P&Z meeting, we've Burleson Crossing East finally went for its final second reading. and it was approved with warrants, with some specific language in the ordinance, attaching the conceptual plan and specifying what a retail shopping center entailed. And then also from the last P&Z meeting, the 2.395 acres of Farm Lot 62, which is up off Pecan Street north of Mesquite. It was a one piece of three properties the property owner owned that he was rezoning to P4 mix, to put his properties together into one zoning district. And that was approved at first reading this week, and will go to the next meeting for second reading.
Item 5B, Planning and Development Department Monthly Project Volume Report. You've been busy.
Yes, so we did 39 new single-family residential permits for the month of June. Tracking with that, we did 148 trades. So for about every new single-family residential, you have about 4 trade permits that get issued. So those numbers track with one another. And in the planning department, we've done 25 sign permits. So some of that's new signs that just didn't get permitted, but a lot of it's just brand new signs. A lot of people are rebranding and doing, putting up new signs all over town. And then we've had a number of just planning applications, from conceptual drainage plans to final drainage plans and those are all various steps in the platting process. So I will say we're maybe in a little bit of a lull, which is good right now, but as you've seen, those 2 developments that we just talked about, the zoning, will all hit this fall. So we'll get busy in a hurry. So.
Are there any questions? Hang in there. Item 5C, individual requests from planning and zoning commissioners that particular items be listed on future agendas. Anybody have any special requests? We know we want to look at signs down the road, but anything else? If not, we will move on to item 6.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Second. Motion and a second. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.